Okay, friends, we're going to pick up today right where we left off yesterday. Yesterday, we looked at a strange story that I told you is a pivotal moment in the book of Matthew, where things change from here on out. And keep in mind that Jesus yesterday was a long way outside of the region of Galilee, over by the Mediterranean Sea. He has this interaction with a woman there who is not a Jew, a Gentile woman, and from here on out we see that Jesus begins to do something differently. And it goes after the question that I began to allude to yesterday, but how is it that you and me, who are not Jews, though obviously some of you may be, I'm not, most of you aren't, who are not Jews by our ancestry, are reading a thoroughly Jewish book about Jewish people that is all about the Jewish Messiah? How is it that we as a Western culture have built our culture around a Jewish text, and again, living a life following after a Jewish Messiah? Up to this point, most of Jesus' ministry has been with his fellow Jews, but I told you what happened yesterday would change everything. We begin to see that happening here. So look at verse 29 with me. We're still in chapter 15. Jesus went on from there and walked beside the Sea of Galilee. Here we see a big and a quick geographical shift, something we don't normally see. There's normally more kind of explicit transitions. I don't know exactly what to make about that, but yesterday he's way up over by the Mediterranean Sea and up north, and here he's back in Galilee walking along the Sea of Galilee. But it's important to see that he's back in that region. Where exactly is he along the Sea of Galilee? We don't know, and that becomes important in just a minute. And he went up on the mountain and sat down there. So Jesus is walking along the Sea of Galilee, and then he goes up on a mountain and sits down, and great crowds came to him. Okay. I want you to think about where we've been in Matthew. I want you to think about if there's been a moment that he's been near the Sea of Galilee, he's climbed up a mountain, sat down, and great crowds have been around him. You remember this? This is like the beginning of Jesus' ministry, when he's by the Sea of Galilee, and he climbs up the mountain, sits down, and begins to teach the Sermon on the Mount. The imagery is very, very similar. What happened with the Sermon on the Mount is that he healed people, and then he went up the mountain. Here it's reversed, but it's the same kind of imagery. The great crowds came to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and they put them at his feet, and he healed them. The word put there is really more like the word for throw. It gives you this image of just people just coming desperate and throwing themselves or throwing their loved ones at the feet of Jesus. So that the crowd wondered when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled healthy, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. That's a strange phrase. They glorified the God of Israel. It's not language that Matthew has used previously, because what's happening is previously Jesus has been working with people who are already worshiping, who are already know the God of Israel. Previously, he's been working with the Jews. Now, this doesn't say here explicitly that Jesus is working with non-Jews here, but based on what happened in the previous story with this Gentile woman, based on the fact that he says explicitly they glorify the God of Israel, and based on some things that are about to happen next, it seems pretty clear that Jesus is by the Sea of Galilee, but he's on the other side. We've talked about the other side before. He's in the Gentile area. And we're getting some repetition here. In fact, this is very, very similar to a passage just one chapter before in 14 where Jesus is healing people. You think, why are we getting the same kind of information again? Well, he's done this in the Jewish area, but now he's doing this in the Gentile area. And then you get the next story, and just look at the heading, the feeding of the 4,000. Well, just a chapter before, he's feeding the 5,000. Why are we getting two stories that are very, very similar? Well, when you look at the feeding of the 5,000, the feeding of the 4,000, there are similarities, but there are also big-time differences. And what those big-time differences point towards is it seems like once again, Jesus is ministering not in a Jewish area, but now he's ministering in a Gentile area. Jesus called the disciples to him and said, "I have compassion on the crowd because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I am unwilling to send them away hungry lest they faint on the way." The disciples said to him, "Where are we to get enough bread in such a desolate place to feed so great a crowd?" You think they just watched him feed 5,000 people. Why are they worried about this now? Well, part of it is they're not getting it, and that's what we tend to think of with the disciples. But part of it is also this. It's likely that they believed that Jesus' abilities, his power, was again given to him in order to minister to and to care for his people, the Jews. Now, look, they've just seen him heal Gentile folks, but it seems to me that they don't understand yet that Jesus' ministry is going to extend in every way beyond the Jewish people. And it's like inconceivable to them that he would sit here and feed this group. And Jesus said to them, "How many loaves do you have?" And he said, 7 and a few small fish. And directing the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and having given them, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 7 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And after sending away the crowds, he went into the boat and went to the region of Magadan. Magadan is some place that we don't know about. We haven't heard about it before. We don't know where it would be. Many scholars believe that this is actually the same place as Magdala. Magdala is a Jewish town on the west side of the Sea of Galilee. So again, if he's coming over from the other side, he would have been in this Gentile area. And when you look at the 7, keep in mind this. When he fed the 5,000, after the 5,000, they collected baskets full of bread. There were 12 baskets. 12 baskets clearly representing the 12 tribes of Israel. So there's enough bread for the people of Israel. That's just the imagery that anybody would have seen. So it's like a basket for every tribe. It's all metaphor, of course. And the baskets would have fed all of the Jewish people. Here you get 7 baskets. Well, what's the deal with that? These 7 baskets, it seems likely that what is happening there is that these 7 baskets represent completeness, wholeness. 7 is the perfect number. So now what we see is that what Jesus is doing is providing spiritual sustenance, providing not just for the 12 tribes of Israel, but for all people. That he is recognizing now, and his disciples may be beginning to get, that he has come not just to save the Jews, but to save everyone. I've harped on this the last couple of days because it is earth-shaking. I mean, it would have been something that was so big and mind-blowing that, again, the disciples maybe begin to get it, but they don't fully grasp it until years after Jesus' ministry. When you read the book of Acts, they're still wrestling with it. It takes them a long time to begin to put all of these pieces together. It would have been hard for them to imagine that you would have billions of people who had no Jewish ancestry at all, who are building their lives around Jesus. And yet that is what has happened here. I think that it leaves us thinking this. Who is it in our lives today that we believe is outside of the work that Jesus is doing? Jesus' work brings us in, when, I'm telling you, friends, nobody would have thought that we would have been brought in this way. We would have been blessed by the Jews, but not have a personal relationship with the Jewish Messiah. Hey, who is it that you are tempted to believe is outside? And do you see that what Jesus is doing here is that he is bringing all people to the inside? He's reaching out to all people. I mean, you've seen this theme throughout. Early on with the Sermon on the Mount, it was that Jews who were poor and disabled are brought in. Now we're extending even beyond that. It's beyond the people of God to all people that he's bringing in. Last little metaphor here. You'll remember that the woman in the story yesterday said, if I could just have a crumb that falls from the table, the master's table, like, that would be enough. Well, here, just a few verses later, what do you have? You have Jesus giving not just crumbs, but you have Jesus giving as much bread as these folks need. In fact, when it says that they ate until they were satisfied, the word satisfied there is until they were like over full, until they were stuffed. You go from this woman begging for just a crumb to Jesus saying, no. The Gentiles will not just get crumbs. They'll get the same thing that the Jews are getting. They'll have what they need to overflowing through me. So who is it that maybe you know that doesn't realize that they need this? And who is it that maybe you need to share this good news with this week? Okay, God bless you, friends. I'm going to be with you again in a few days when we get into chapter 17, and we've got some great stuff for you the next couple days also. Keep reading, and I'll see you soon.